Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Ayers home. I am here with Rachel Dolezal, and I just want to thank her for being my guest. So she and I are going to sit here and have a little girl chat about defining beauty. Rachel, welcome,
Thank you.
and thank you so much for agreeing to sit down and chat with me.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And so I just kind of want to just dive right in. And I want to ask you what surfaces to your mind when you think about the idea of beauty?
The first word that comes to mind when I think of beauty is kindness. Because I think that there are different ways of defining beauty and the counterpart, ugliness. And I think kindness and compassion really are some core values that I think are just very beautiful in any person.
Absolutely. When I think about the idea of defining beauty, beauty can be considered so many different facets of who we are as women. And I think it's important that we're able to share what we understand as beauty because it's so many things. And so, as a woman myself, I know from my own personal experiences and different things from my childhood to growing up, there are so many different things that I look at that makes me sometimes not like myself or sometimes not feel beautiful when I think about a past hurt or pain or a current hurt, current pain. How has that been for you when you think back to your childhood to where you are now in terms of how you define beauty?
Well, when I think back to my childhood, I think of a lot of painful memories, actually. And a lot of that was connected with feeling less than and feeling not good enough and feeling, quite honestly, like it was impossible to ever reach the standard of beauty because, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't born with that magic combination. And I just remember that when I was growing up, it was not curvy was beautiful. It was skinny, and I just could never be skinny enough, and no matter what it is, it's like you can never just be enough of fill in the blank. And I think that's what society does is even though every 10 years or every decade there's a change in what is considered beautiful in the mainstream, 10 years ago, skinny was in. Now, 10 years later, people are getting all kinds of surgeries to have a curvy body or to look thicker or whatever. And so no matter what the trend is, just having your own sense of self. And I think I had to really grow into a sense of self-love and appreciation so that I could, stay encouraged and uplifted within my own spirit, regardless of what everybody else says, which is hard.
Oh, it's very hard. Because we live in this world. We live in this world, and everything around us tells us what's beautiful.
Right.
And so, based on those standards, what would you consider to be your standard of beauty? Based on, I guess, in comparison with some of the things you mentioned, like what society, 1 minute, skinny is in, now skinny is out, 1 minute this is in, that. So based on those experiences and based on that understanding, what do you find from then until now? Have you developed your own standard of beauty? Or because of where society is, do you still struggle with measuring up to society's standard of beauty?
Well, probably both. I do. It's like I have come to a sense of what I believe is beautiful, not just for me, but kind of in general, in sort of like a moral sense. What I think is beautiful in others. But I also feel like it's important for me to know how I feel beautiful and not to superimpose that on somebody else as an expectation. Like, I love the textured hair movement, the natural hair movement. I love curls. I love braids. I love, not everybody does.
Sure.
And so to say like everybody has to wear this, their hair this way or do this or that with hair, I think is oppressive, because there's empowerment in choice.
Absolutely.
And so, this is one of the hairstyles that I feel beautiful, and so that's like when you want to step out, whether you wear makeup or don't wear makeup or however you fix your hair, you want to present yourself to the world in a way that makes you feel good and confident. Mm-hmm. And it does hurt if you're met with backlash and with people saying that doesn't look good.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm not going to step out looking crazy or looking some kind of way that I don't feel good.
Sure.
Because those years are gone, doing what I'm told to do.
Good
because, I did that as a kid, and I was, punished if I didn't. So I learned to, and I was not allowed to braid my hair. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of attached to a very fundamentalist religious idea. But, as being a vain thing, and being like slavery to hairstyles and all these ideas that kind of came out of like an Amish, I don't even know, like a very specific frame of mind.
Sure.
And I feel like there's
a more
freedom.
Standardized way of doing things.
Yeah, well, but what is the standard? I mean, I think, like that standard came after thousands of years of hair braiding.
Sure.
So it's kind of like this action and reaction to things throughout human history. And I feel like it's just important for us to know what we feel good and what we feel right about and what we feel at peace in.
So if you had to look back at that little girl that you were given where you are now, thinking about where she was then, thinking about the experiences from then until now, what would you say to encourage her beauty from the inside out?
I would definitely tell that little girl, me, many years ago, that everything is temporary, that you won't be in this household forever, that you won't always be oppressed by a man, that you have the right to choose what you want to do with your life, and you don't have to be punished for not conforming.
Wow. So my next question is, beauty in the eye of the beholder. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
I think that beauty in the eye of the beholder means that the person with the gaze is defining beauty for the other person, as opposed to the person themselves defining beauty within.
So then how do you define your beauty within?
I think that's, in a kind of spiritual way, it's like turning that gaze around and inward more than on the external.
At your worst moment of not feeling beautiful, what did that feel like?
It felt empty. It felt very close to death.
Wow.
Like a non-existence, like being invisible, or.
That's a very powerful thing. It's a very powerful thing. I understand all too well what that feels like. One of the things that resonated with me about you, as I read about you and just learning about you, looking beyond the headlines, looking beyond the sound bites, looking beyond the memes and a lot of the other unhealthy suggested things, thinking about you just as a person and thinking about you as a woman, I always say that a woman can hurt another woman like no man can. But I also believe that a woman can encourage another woman like no man can. And I know just from my own experiences growing up, there were times I looked in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. But the interesting thing is, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see my face. I saw my experience. I saw my circumstance. And so I saw those things that defined that beauty. So when you think about beauty in the eye of the beholder was society.
Right.
The beholder were the kids at school, you know, or as a kid thinking the beholder was somebody in my family that didn't look at me the way I wanted to see me.
Right.
Because there are times I looked in the mirror and I saw Shannon, and then there were other times I looked in the mirror and I saw those things that were said about me. And I saw the ugliness and the hurt, and then that became who I was. So while the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, then I became the beholder.
Yeah.
I became the beholder. I was the one gazing. And so I then would say those same things to that girl that I saw in the mirror. And that's why I asked that question, because when we think about women and we think about beauty, we can talk all day about what society says, whether you're black, you're white, you're light skin, dark skin, all those things. At the end of the day, the core of who we are, we're still women.
Right.
We still hurt. We still love. The unfortunate thing is, oftentimes we become what others want us to be. Do you ever find yourself in the trap of kind of a tug of war? This is Rachel. This is who they say I am. This is Rachel. This is my experience. Who do you choose?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest experience with that kind of tug of war was when I was in college, in terms of not, kind of like not being able to have peace, like really going back and forth, and just, people were telling me, one thing, and I was feeling another thing, and then I was trying to like find my place in the world, but I was coming out of a very repressed childhood where I didn't feel like I had the right as a woman to have a voice and to define myself. So I was always looking for permission to be, and permission to, even the first time I braided my hair, I asked permission, like from my girlfriends, like I felt like I didn't have the right to anything without somebody else giving me that right.
And now
I feel like I do have the right to be me.
and who are you?
I am a mother. It's probably my first and foremost identity.
And I have to just point out that when you said I'm a mother, your whole aura changed.
Right. Yeah.
Your whole aura changed.
Because I love my children, and they're the most important thing to me. And I'm also an educator and an advocate, although I feel like I'm not allowed to be that right now. But I still stay very clear on who I am, even if those opportunities aren't available to me. I also feel like there are some times, we're talking a lot about beauty. I think that there are times that I have struggled with even eating disorders and things like that in order to self-destruct, because I didn't want that attention from men. And like if I could gain weight, or if I could make myself less attractive in a sexual way, then maybe I would be more at peace and safer. Um, and I was molested as a child, and then I also was drugged and raped after my divorce. And
what did that do to how you looked at yourself from that point forward?
I feel like, so those two situations made me feel like my body was useful to men. Like they didn't want me, they just wanted my body. So if I could somehow like destruct or destroy what they wanted about my body, then I could live a safer life or have a greater degree of freedom. But having, struggling with eating, if I put on too much weight, I feel uncomfortable and I don't feel right. So then I don't feel good. And then I feel like, well, but I'm warding off all that attention, but then I don't like how I fit in my clothes and things like that. So it's just so
either way,
that's that
you don't win.
Right. You're caught in between finding yourself lovable and then finding, other people wanting you. And I've always been wanted for what I can do. I can cook, I can clean, I can bear children,
But is that the totality of who you are?
No, that's not me. And even in my 5-year marriage, I don't feel like my husband ever even knew who I was. I don't think that very many people see me. And they just see either white or black or thin or curvy, or, they just like see my skills and what I can do for them.
So then when you look into the mirror, what do you see?
I see, like I said, a mother. I see an artist, a creator of many things, whether it's art, cooking, gardening. I'm just a very creative person. And
do you find that those things get lost in what other people want you to be?
Definitely, yeah.
Because that can be. I've seen your artwork,
Mm-hmm.
and your artwork is incredible. My dad, he does it as a hobby,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad, he does these great mosaics,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never seen anything like them. So that's his unique talent.
Right.
And so when I look at your artwork, that's what that reminds me of.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know when he does his artwork, like he has this project, like he's doing a picture for every one of his grandkids, but the grandkids keep coming. And so he said,
Yeah.
you can say, I bit off more than I can chew. But even with the ones that he sent my kids, I can see the love and the time and the attention that went into making those mosaics.
Right.
And he said he'd never sell them. He'd never do it. He could literally make a living and probably be a bazillionaire if he ever sold them. But that's what makes those so special, because of the love that he puts into them.
Right.
And so when I was scrolling through your paintings, I was like, wow. I mean, incredible artist. And so in watching your documentary, and throughout the documentary, you were painting this beautiful, I mean, really incredible picture of a woman, a beautiful brown-skinned woman. And then at the end of the documentary, you colored through it.
Mm.
What was in that?
Well, so part of the, just the behind the scenes, the documentary showed me creating a lot of different art, and then one of the things that the director thought it'd be interesting if I did a self-portrait so that people could see my view of myself. But when I was painting that self-portrait, all I could really hear, it's like the cameras were set up in the studio, so I wasn't alone, in a sense, and all I could hear is all the noise of what everybody says about me. That, you'll never be black enough, you'll never be white enough, you're the biggest insult to black women, you're the biggest insult to white women.
What did that do to that little girl that was inside of you?
I think that it just, again, makes me feel like I don't want to exist. Like I just want to go away. Because there's no place for me. Even though I understand it's not like everybody's saying that. But when I listen to those voices, and those things, have been called.
Just something how the negativity resonates more.
Yeah, you can have 100 compliments and then you can be called one slur, and you're going to hear that slur over and over. And
do you think that defines you in a way?
I think that the hurt from rejection is something that I have to work really hard to not let that shape my mind. But I can't pretend it doesn't hurt, because I have to keep my heart open. If I was to close off and become unfeeling, then maybe it wouldn't hurt. But I also wouldn't care. So I keep my heart open because I do care. And I want to love others. And even people who say those kinds of things, sometimes I feel like they don't know what they're saying or how it's affecting me. And so I have to compartmentalize that, like understand it's not even about me. They're just talking about an idea, like a cartoon character or something. But it's not just after I had Langston.
And Langston is your 3-year-old.
Langston's my 3-year-old, yeah. After I gave birth, it was, I was struggling, which I still am struggling to lose those last 10 or 15 baby weight.
Aren't we all?
But it's people, more than one person on my social media people make comments and you're just getting fatter and fatter and things like that. And then it's hard. I feel like that doesn't help, it's not an encouragement. That's kind of it makes you wonder, because it's a reflection of how other people see you, am I declining? But am I, you can always check in with the scale, but you know what I mean? But it does, right. But if somebody says, you look really old, or whatever it is, whether it's age or weight or, wow, you didn't do your makeup today, or whatever it is, you start then thinking about that. Like you said, you turn the gaze inward and and you start questioning, should I do something different? Is there, gosh, I should go to the gym. Because you don't want more rejection. You don't want to hear that again.
Sure.
So, what can you do to protect yourself from hurt?
So finding yourself in the same cycle as you were as a little girl, maybe trying to please your parents.
Right.
Or trying to fit in somewhere where you didn't feel as though you belonged.
Mm-hmm. And I think also, at the same time, being a middle-aged woman and knowing that that's all silliness, and you have the logical side of it, saying don't care what anybody says, just brush it off. That's the strong woman that keeps going.
The reality of it is we hardly ever brush it off. We push it to the side for a moment, and then have a moment, and then the moment there's a glimpse. It's almost kind of like a certain scent that reminds you of something, or a certain song that reminds you of something. Right. That's how insults are. Yeah. And when you hear it, it takes you back to almost every moment when someone doubted you or didn't think you were good enough. Right. And that's why your story resonated with me so much. I didn't see a lot of the things a lot of other people saw. Because just in general, it wasn't about race, it wasn't about any of those things. Just in general, when I look at people, ironically enough, when I look at people, I look at the little girl that I was. And I think about, and I even do this even with my children and having 3 girls, and I think about how how certain things made me feel and how it didn't matter when someone made me feel less than.
Right.
And as I got older, I started to realize it mattered just a little too much because it swallowed me.
Right.
And what I mean by it swallowed me is going back to what you were saying, I lost my voice. A lot of people that know me consider me to be bold, consider me to be strong, very outspoken, and I am those things.
The same with people that know me.
But you know what gets lost in that?
Yeah.
Your humanity gets lost in that because people don't realize that's not all I am.
Yeah.
I hurt like everybody else hurts. I want to be loved. I want to be touched. I want to be made to feel special.
Right.
Everybody wants to hear at least once in their lifetime, you're beautiful, hopefully more than once. But you want to at least hear that somebody else thinks you're worth it,
Right.
that you matter,
Right.
that you have value.
And I think that's back to your point of a woman can say that in a way that a man can't sometimes, even though I'm bisexual. So, that aside, but like a woman to woman, like I feel like that's, in a non-romantic way, you can receive it.
Sure.
Whereas if it's said like, hey, you're beautiful, in a romantic type of way, then it's like my wall goes up.
Sure.
Like, that's not safe. What's your intention?
And why is that?
Because my experience has been that people want something from, like, they're not just saying you're beautiful because they think you're beautiful. They're saying, you're beautiful, can I get that door cracked open so that I can get something from you?
Sure.
And yeah, I feel like that's, like right now my heart is really just too broken to love in that way. And so my wall just goes straight up. Like, if you say I'm beautiful, I will never respond to your message on social media. No, if you say that you like my artwork, then I'll probably say, well, thank you. But because I feel like my defense goes up, like, what do you want?
Well, can you go back to a time where someone told you you were beautiful and you felt that they meant it, what that felt like, and why did it mean something? And it doesn't matter. I'm not necessarily talking, it could be whatever,
I would say, like, the first thing that comes to mind is one of my sons when he was little. And it's like just the sincerity and the authenticity that I knew that, like, he saw me, not just what I look like, not my body, but he saw, like, my body and my mind and my spirit. And when he said, Mom, you're so beautiful. And he was really little, but he was like, I'm going to marry you when I grow up. I was like, yeah, you're going to change your mind on that one. But, it was just that sense of, like, yeah, you're really great. You're really an amazing person. And there's no ulterior motive. There's not, like, I want you to buy me something or, like in that moment. Now there are other moments that...
As our kids can
Because
give us
kids can,
yes.
yeah, they can get a little manipulative. But I think that, yeah, it's harder to hear. I think especially if there's been like a sexual assault experience, it's harder to hear that from somebody when they have a sexual intention. It's harder for me to actually believe that they're saying that.
Sure.
It just sounds like, I mean, I just don't believe it. I don't buy it without some other kind of substance. Like,
sure.
Tell me why. Tell me what you see, not just, the green eyes or the whatever.
Sure.
I don't care. I want to know.
Tell me this. Bringing up the idea of sexual assault, did you ever get therapy or any type of help to help you through the trauma? of being sexually assaulted?
I did. I feel like, I could definitely use some therapy for going through those last 4.5 years. But I also feel like, in a sense, there's like a never-ending kind of rolling process for like the need for therapy,
Sure.
And I've engaged that process when I felt like it was an urgent
Good.
need where I could get closure and move, forward. But having an incident that happened and then you heal from it is different than having something that like is perpetuating every day for years and you don't know when the end will come. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm dealing with now, that I don't feel like therapy would be helpful because the very next day it's going to happen again, and it's going to all flood right back in. Yeah. And then we're back to square one as far as just, it's more of a surviving and coping and dealing and functioning, like staying functional, finding moments of happiness. I mean, just, like living through something until I can get to a place where we're stabilized enough in practical ways, financially and location and that kind of thing, to where hopefully then I can invest some more time, but it really does take an investment. Sure. Because to go through therapy, if you're doing it right, isn't just sitting on a couch for an hour and then you go back home and everything. It affects your entire day. It can kind of like undo your plans for the rest of the day if you really are unpacking some of that baggage. So
then having kids, how do you think those experiences, I mean, obviously you love your babies.
Yeah.
And I know they're bigger now, at least the older two, but yeah. How do you think your experiences and how you internalize them and how they still affect you, with the idea of still putting up walls and still not being as trusting as you probably once were, how do you think that affects them?
So I think that they know me. My two older sons know me well.
And that would be
Isaiah and Franklin, yeah. And they know they know everything, basically. Like, I may have even raised them a little bit too willing to share. Heard some things, about their experience, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I did not want to know. But I think likewise, like they don't necessarily, I don't know if they really care whether I get therapy or whether I'm dealing with it internally or whether I'm putting up walls, but they do care that I am on the path to happiness, that I get my joy back. But eventually.
Do you think it affects them? So that's them caring for you.
Right.
Them as individuals and who will someday maybe get married or have relationships. How do you think that it affects them personally in terms of their own growth and their own development? I know as a mom of 4, right, and I look at my children usually know when I'm happy. Yeah. They usually know when I'm sad. And what's really telling is looking at them becoming young adults and looking at how they deal with life, right, and how they deal with experiences. And I know some of my experiences, even though it was not intentional, was projected on to them. How do you think for your boys, since you don't have any daughters, how do you think your boys internalize that, or do you think that it has affected them in a way that helps them or causes them to look at relationships differently or people differently, or maybe because of your experiences not be as trusting or put walls up? And I know a lot of times things are a little bit different for guys than they are for girls, but right, at the end of the day, they still hurt and feel the way we do. They they show it in different ways. Do you find that any of those things show up in your kids?
I wouldn't say with like romantic relationships. I don't think that they model any of that after mine. In fact, I think they just rather I never date. I mean, I think they're glad that I haven't dated in the last 4.5 years, because they don't like guys around. They kind of like territorial about, and they want all their mom's time and attention and everything. So I think that they are freely doing their own thing with regards to that. I do think, however, everything that's happened with our family being made so public, and everything being on social media, and them getting harassing phone calls and texts and messages as well. Tell your mom to jump off the bridge and do the world a favor. Tell your mom to, like, your mom is a blank, 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 blank. That affects them kind of in a way that I've seen it hurts them, because they feel helpless. They want to protect me, but they can't. And so there's been definitely some anger toward the world, in a sense. Like, I think that a lot of this has affected my sons in ways that maybe people wouldn't expect, as far as they've had some anger toward, and maybe even resentment toward, just the world, towards the media, and it makes them less trusting of public spaces, for sure, and more careful in that regard. I do think, though, that it also, because we've had a lot of private support, like people reaching out one-on-one, that has encouraged them in just like personal relationships.
Sure.
I don't think they have those same walls. I think a lot of the wall that I have right now, as far as like a romantic or intimate relationship, has to do with me wanting to protect not just myself but also them.
Sure.
Because I don't feel like we can risk anything more. Like we have to just like button up the hatches and just just keep everything as together as possible. But I think overall, Isaiah has said that he has really been inspired by my many ways of pulling in very small little dribbles of income. Like he's like, it's really inspiring to just watch how many different ways that you can create, and all these little side hustles, like 10 little or a dozen little teeny things, like make a job when you can't get a job, kind of a thing.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because from what I've read about you and what I've seen, anybody with your credentials, with your education and your experience should not have trouble finding viable work.
Right.
How does that, because I think that also is tied into self-worth and value, to know that you're as educated as you are,
Right.
to understand the running joke is, when I kind of chat with my husband, it's just like, I'm waiting to find the horrible things, the terrible things, and what I find instead, I find an incredibly talented person, a very creative person, a very intelligent person who's had a very good career prior to June 2015.
Right.
And then to find yourself looking for ways or looking for a hustle just to get by. As someone who comes from very humble beginnings, and not ashamed at all, because I know it made me who I am today, but I can only imagine, once again, going back to that little girl who didn't have any degrees, who didn't have any, good job or a nice house or a nice car and all these things, to get to a point in your life where you have accomplished as much as you've accomplished, and now to be relegated to a side hustle And again, not to suggest that any of those things are bad. You do what you have to do
Right.
to survive. You have children to take care of. You have to live. How does that make you feel as a woman and as a human being that have all of these things that you're not allowed to share or make a living and enjoy what you do? How does that affect that person on the inside, day to day, when nobody's looking, when the babies are asleep, and you're just with Rachel?
Right. It's very hard. It's been humiliating in a sense to be shamed, like to the level where I'm cut out of job opportunities, not just in my field, but all the way down, not down, but like pay scale down,
Sure.
to minimum wage jobs. I applied for everything I was qualified for. Again, I'm staying in the area that I'm in because I'm waiting for Franklin to graduate high school because I'm not going to leave him behind. But in that area, I'm so like blacklisted from employment that I can't get a job as a maid at a hotel with a terminal degree, summa cum laude, and all of 15 college courses that I've taught, and an incredible resume with a lot of awards. So it does, I try to hold on to the fact that I did achieve those things, that I try to remind myself, like, this is who you are. You were a very, highly decorated leader in some regards, and it,
Are you still that
unfortunately,
person?
well, I'm not a highly decorated leader, but yes, I am still the person who is the educator and the advocate. I'm just not winning awards for it. I don't have a job. I don't have a title. So in some ways, I'm not able to be effective at that work because without a class, you're not a teacher. You're just knowledgeable.
Sure.
Without people following, you're not leading anything. You're just going for a walk. You can't be effective in certain things without having access to the table.
Sure.
So I think that in that regard, it's very hard to keep myself clear on my worth and my value. Meanwhile, I'm getting the complete opposite message from the world, that I don't have value, that I should go away, that I would be, like somebody said they would pay 5 years of their salary to see me stoned to death, and different things that, like, people would literally celebrate me being gone when people celebrated me before for what I brought to the table. So it's kind of like having both of those different messages I have to be clear on, regardless of whether I'm praised or banished. I'm
Sure.
still me. I still have all those same skills, even though I'm getting a little out of practice in some ways, after 4.5 years, that's a gap. But I try and stay ready to get back into the field that I'm passionate about. And that's all I can do. I can't force, even Malcolm X said, if they won't give you a job, make a job, and so I feel like that's what I've done, is with all these little pieces,
Sure.
I've cobbled together a way forward for us temporarily.
Sure.
But we're looking at 2020, Franklin will graduate, and
New
I'm really
beginning.
hopeful that somewhere out of that area will allow me to work, will give me an opportunity, because I'm reaching out, and I do hope that I can teach again, and that I can advocate for social justice causes, and pick up where I left off, so to speak. But I don't know yet if that's going to be possible.
But
a lot of that isn't on me.
But
That's kinda
why
on-
you mentioned social justice, and you mentioned about the work. Why is that so important to you?
Because that's my purpose,
And that purpose is what?
to help others and to fight for justice and for healing. And a lot of that connects back to my own path toward healing, you know,
Sure.
and self-empowerment, because I feel like that is so important. And I wish that I had had an advocate for me when I was a little girl. And so I'll be damned if I'm not the advocate for somebody else, because I know what it's like to feel all alone, whether in a family or a community or whatever. And I am committed to fighting for access, equity, and inclusion, like point blank, no matter who it's for. But I really believe in those core values, and I never imagined that I'd have to fight for my own access again as an adult, because I thought I had evolved past that or through that. I thought I had
takes
healed.
you back, almost like in the spinning wheel,
Yeah.
running in circles.
Yeah, I thought that, you know,
Instead of going forward, no, I'm
right,
just coming right back
like
to the
I
same
had
thing.
healed and I could then fight for a cause that would help others. But now I find myself like fighting for myself. And
Have you
wanting
ever
to get
fought
back.
for yourself? Like
In
what
different
does
ways.
that fight look like? I mean, I've seen a lot of the work that you've done, which I find extremely incredible. I've watched a lot of footage of a lot of the progress that you made, and I noticed in all of the criticisms of you and all of the things that were said about you, I could not find where anyone had anything negative or bad to say about the work you did.
Right.
Well, the people that you were fighting against, of course, we expect that, but I'm just the people that you were advocating for. I've looked and I've searched and I've looked and I've searched, and I have not found anything that you've done in terms of your work that was anything short of advocating and fighting for someone else. And I've seen the passion in your eyes when you're sitting, you know, on that board and you're asking certain questions and wanting to make sure that others had a voice at the table. So, where's your voice?
Well, I'm not at the table any longer. But
You're not at their table any
Right.
longer, but I ask you, okay, again, you advocated for others. And going back to your childhood and going back to those experiences, and even with what you just shared, you know, not having anyone to advocate
Right.
for you.
So I think like self-advocacy looks like, you know, taking care of myself, of my health, remaining functional for my kids, like as a mom, because that does give me a degree of pride and satisfaction that I'm actually succeeding at one thing. You know, even if I'm not succeeding at getting a job, I can succeed at cooking dinner, and I can succeed at changing diapers, and I can succeed at keeping, you know, the college applications going and that kind of thing. So I feel like I think also fighting for myself looks like continuing to apply for jobs and continuing to say, like, this is my resume, see me.
Now, that's your education, that's your experience. So those are the things that as adults we do to function in the world. But who fights for Rachel? This person in here. I mean, you can fill out job applications, you can go for job interviews. Those are things, like I said, that, you know, keeps you functioning in the world. But
Yeah, well, but in my case, it's also what keeps me sane as far as like being very clear on what I'm worth. You know, it's not just you know, it's in the face of widespread rejection that I'm still going to keep trying. I'm still going to reach out, even though 13 speaking engagements have been canceled. I'm still going to accept the next one. You know, and that to me is legitimately fighting. It's not just going through emotions that everybody goes through.
Sure.
It's saying in the face of most likely this is gonna be a no. You're still gonna try. And so I think like to persist and to even just to exist in a way is fighting for me.
Well, I think it speaks volumes. I think it speaks volumes that you don't really know me, but that you're here and that you took a chance. And I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate you trusting that this would not be a gotcha moment, that this would not be a let's see how we can expose whatever it is people think, whoever it is that they think that you are, regardless of who likes it or who doesn't like it, that I'm doing this interview with you. If I say that I'm an advocate for women, are you a woman?
Yeah.
Do you have a voice?
Yeah.
You have a voice. It may not feel like it,
Right.
but you have a voice. And what troubles me with women in general, and again, across the board, I mean, we can talk about race, we can talk about culture, women. I've traveled the world, and every woman that I've met, and I talked about this in my book, Tunnel Vision, The State of Our Union, and the reason why that experience resonated so much with me is because when I was in that tunnel during President Obama's inauguration, I met so many people from so many different walks of life, and for that one moment in time, nobody cared what my race was, nobody cared what my gender was, nobody cared how much money I had in my pocket. I was treated like a human being.
Right.
And so as an advocate for women specifically, I think it would be hypocritical of me not to look at you as a woman. Human being first, but as a woman. Doesn't matter whether I agree or disagree with whatever your choice is. That doesn't matter. What matters is humanizing Rachel. It disturbs me on so many levels when I listen to the ugly things that you've shared, that people have said to you. And it just blows my mind that if people are that angry and that upset about whatever it is that they feel that you've done, how do they feel about themselves for spewing such ugliness? You're an easy target. You're an easy target. That does not take away the fact that you hurt like anybody else hurts. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter how much education you have. It doesn't matter how many great jobs you've had and what great awards you have. At the end of the day, you feel like anybody else feels. And I would challenge anyone to put themselves in the shoes of someone who becomes the target in such a social way, since we're in such a polarizing climate. I just find it very disturbing that it's okay.
Right.
Again, if I'm an advocate for women, then I have to care about you as a woman, even not knowing you as a woman. People only see us and define us as a thing.
Right.
And it's never the totality of who we are. If you and I were friends and you did something to bother me and that I didn't like, does that become the total being of who you are, that I totally dismiss you and walk away? In our typical relationships, we never do that. We never do that. But in society, because we can hide behind computer screens, we can hide behind tweets, and we can hide behind memes. And I guarantee you that every single one of those people that are spewing that ugliness and hate, it's one thing to have a disagreement. It's one thing to have an opinion, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, whether we agree or disagree. But it's another thing to wish death on another human being, to terrorize your children, to do these hurtful and awful things. And what made me sympathetic to what I saw you experiencing is putting myself in your shoes. Not as a black woman, Not you as a white woman, but you as a woman, as a mother, having been a wife, and those experiences. And I just find it very unfortunate. But you are not what anyone says you are.
Right.
You are who Rachel believes Rachel is.
Right.
And my hope for you is that you don't allow others to define your beauty. I know it hurts. That's the humanity in us. It's going to hurt. But at some point, my hope and my prayer is that you can look in the mirror one day and say, you know, words, yes, they do matter, but I matter more. So in that, I will ask you, what is your beauty contribution to this world?
My beauty contribution. Well, back to like how our conversation started, I really think that beauty is kindness, and nurturing my children is a contribution, and I think that's beautiful. I do also think that organizing and community development and advocating and educating in the ways that I have done has been a beautiful gift to the world.
Do you think
I
that's
think
your
that-
legacy?
I don't think my legacy is actually finished. You know, I don't know that I can say what my legacy is right now, because I feel like I'm in the middle of, you know, it could go any direction at this point. I mean, we're one moment away from your life being ruined or elevated. I mean, depending on, in the social media world, it's like anything can happen, which is the excitement of it and also the scariness of it. But I also feel like for the many women who I've done hair for, that's also a contribution. And also the younger girls who, especially girls who have been adopted, who didn't have self-confidence, and I've helped them with their hair and seen those smiles and those faces light up. And I think that, you know, even though doing hair and being a braider is not a highly elevated title, it still is in some ways like a contribution.
Absolutely.
To, you know, for beauty. So
it's your art. In a sense. I know a lot of people who are very creative and very talented, and there are some common traits in people who are artists or who are creators.
Right.
And even in the way you braid hair or the way you do a style, that's creativity.
Yeah.
That's art. And I think that with the talents that you've been blessed with, that it should definitely not go unnoticed, even by you. Understanding, it's one thing to feel creative, it's, you know, and feel, you know, artistic and, you know, and all of that other good stuff, but it's another thing to understand your own value and your own worth.
Right.
I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. I've been judged. I've been talked about. I've been looked upon certain ways. And then I find moments in my life where I look at something that I've created, or I look at something that I've done, and sometimes I sit back in awe. And what I mean by that is, this is the person that they said wouldn't do a thing. This is the person that they thought wouldn't be here. This is the person that they thought wouldn't accomplish certain things. They had me labeled.
Right.
And so the stubbornness in me, you know, had the drive to say, yeah, okay. You know, and even with the stubbornness and the drive to prove someone wrong, the reality of it is, at the end of the day, when you're sitting with yourself, it still hurts. You still feel it. At this age, though, the shift for me, and I won't say that I've arrived, but the shift for me is understanding that hurt people, and that we're all flawed individuals. Even those negative people that are saying all of these awful things, I guarantee you that there's some type of hurt or negativity in their life that they're projecting on you.
Right.
So the next time you hear those things, yes, it may hurt or it may sting, but the one thing that I've found helpful is when those things happen to me, and they still happen to me today, I try to flip the script a bit and change the narrative and change the perspective and say, you know, for me, spiritually speaking, Lord, what's hindering their life? And it's hard to do that when you have people that are just being hateful and mean and ugly. But what I found is when I flip the script to try to maybe understand what they may be going through, or you know, why is it so easy for them to project that ugliness, then it kind of takes the sting away a little bit. Because then I think about myself, you know, I'm hurting. I'm feeling, you know, a certain way. We all feel, but at the end of the day, you know who you are at your core. And that's the voice you have to listen to. So I want to know, during your most darkest moments, who inspires you?
Well, as strange as it might sound, I feel like I have to just dig deeper inside myself to find inspiration. I know as a kid, I used to kind of look up to role models and authors, and I loved James Baldwin, and I loved Toni Morrison, and I feel like the last 4.5 years, a lot of the people who I looked up to have kind of let me down. And so whether directly saying something negative about me or
Not supporting you.
being silent, and which I don't fault them for, it's just I kind of had my bubble burst on looking up to. And I also lost my dad a little over a year ago, and he was the last parental figure or extended family in my life. So it's now just, you know, me and my kids, and I feel like I find myself like just kind of in a state of introspection and like looking inward more than anything else for strength. Like I said before, like being very clear on like who I am, reminding myself, like doing my own pep talks, reminding myself of, you know, whether it's abilities or value or whatever that I have that people can't take away from me. So sometimes I just kind of try and do that, and then other times, honestly, I just watch some trash TV or something and just like get my mind off of it, because sometimes that can help it not take root as far as like, you know, dwelling on negative thoughts. Sometimes if you can just like get out of your mind quicker the better, and then, you know, so yeah, cooking, painting, playing with Langston. I mean, all those things are good conduits to kind of like move positive energy more into
Absolutely.
my spirit. So yeah.
To conclude this interview, I would like to do a word association.
Okay.
So that when I say a word, I want you to tell me what comes to mind.
Okay.
Okay. Ugly.
It's so hard to say like the first thing that comes to mind because I want to censor it. I'm like, no, don't say it. What? You want me to say it?
Is it child friendly?
Are we playing this game?
Well, give us an idea.
No, I'm just kind of like ashamed because it's like I sort of am not really into like religion a lot. So like, but I feel like some of it just comes. So like I was gonna say sin, but that's like so abstract to me now because I feel like that's kind of I'm the beholder to some extent in society. So
Okay.
anyway, but
All
yeah,
right.
evil and sin I think are ugly.
Okay. Regret.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Forgiveness.
Hard.
Beauty.
Smile.
And the last one is Rachel.
Oh God. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is my legal name, which is Nkechi, because I'm used to toggling back and forth between them.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. Well, I thank you. I thank you for opening up. I know it's not easy. I know things for you right now is not where you would want them to be.
Yeah.
I encourage you as a woman that you are beautiful, you are talented, you are creative. Do not allow people to define who you are. We have to live in this world. That's a given. We have to live in this world, and unfortunately, we don't always get to decide how people categorize us or define us. Anybody that knows me knows I have no trouble with going against the grain and not doing what everybody else does. People don't always agree with my perspective on things, and I respect other people's perspective, but with respecting your feelings about religion, I will just speak about my own spiritual belief. I truly believe that if I say that I am a child of God, and I believe that there is a God, and I believe that there is a Jesus Christ, that supersedes race, discrimination, injustice, ugliness, whether you like me or you don't like me, whether you like the way I look or you don't like the way, whether you like who I identify as or you don't, it supersedes it all. So I have to treat you not how you believe, but I have to treat you how I believe. As someone who believes in a God that loves us, that cares about us, that gives us purpose in this world. And I believe that He blessed you with talents and with gifts. And my prayer is that regardless of what that experience was you had as a child, coming up with those experiences, is that you will know the God that I know. Because the God that I know allows me to invite you into my home. This is my home that I share with my family. This is not a stage. This is my home. We sit here, we watch football games, we lay up, we whatever. This is my home. And so I have to project to you and anybody else what I feel the God that I love and the God that I serve would want me to do. Because I could not do it if I didn't. I have to behave and act in a way to what I subscribe to.
Right.
And the God that I subscribe to tells me to love in spite of, because He loves me in spite of. So from the moment I saw your story, my heart ached for you. My heart still aches for you. Just being in your presence, just this short period of time, sitting with you at dinner and being able to engage, and really the fact that you can let your hair down and we can just have fun and eat up my husband's food and those things I think help to make you feel human again and understand that you're worthy, you have value, and that your presence matters. So I can't say what anybody would think of this or not, because I didn't do it for that reason.
Right.
What I shared with you, and I hope I kept my word, is my goal was to humanize Rachel. Rachel Dolezal. That was my goal, and I hope I was successful to some extent. It's not about trying to convince anybody one way or the other in terms of what they believe or don't believe. But in spite of whatever it is that they do believe, that they look at you as a woman and as a mother and as a human being.
Mm.
And so, having said that, I will continue to advocate for you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.